Welcome. This is a video explaining on how prescription drug prices are set. This is a project of CT Healthcare Explained. I am Tresora Taylor, a fellow at the CT Healthcare Policy Project. Drug spending in Connecticut is high and is driving up healthcare costs. Many prescription drugs offer incredible potential to heal and save lives. New gene therapies can cure disease that had few and very costly treatment options in the past. While prescription drug costs have risen, some can help prevent more costly care, such as inpatient hospital admissions or emergency room visits. But too many costly new drugs have little evidence that they are effective and are not worth their prices. Over 1 in 10 US households can't pay for a prescription drug due to cost. CT residents spend 15% of our per person healthcare budget on drugs, more than all but one other state. CT residents is rising even faster than most Americans. Soaring prices for drugs are driving healthcare costs, making care unaffordable for many, and forcing sacrifices for families and taxpayers. And Connecticut resident prescription drug spending is the second highest in the nation, and these costs are going up faster. Drug companies are very profitable. From 2000 to 2018, profits for 35 large drug companies averaged 13.8% of revenue. This is far higher than other industries where profits for 357 large non-pharma companies were 7.7%. It's estimated that drug companies could lose $1 trillion in sales without reducing research and development spending and still be the most profitable industry. Pharma notes that in 2020, just half of drug spending went to companies that developed, researched, and manufactured drugs. The rest was spent on insurers, middlemen like pharmacy benefit managers, providers, and others. Pharma points out that in 2021, drug companies paid $236 billion in rebates, discounts, and other payments, some of which was not passed on to consumers. Drug companies increase their profits with advertising and with payments to physicians and nonprofits. In 2018, drug companies spent $6.5 billion on advertising to consumers. When most countries prohibit drug company ads to consumers, researchers found that in 2013, 9 out of 10 top drug companies spent more on advertising than on research and development of new drugs. Drug companies also boost their sales with gifts and payments to physicians who prescribe their products. About half of all US physicians receive payments from drug companies, totaling about $2 billion. The payments include free meals, luxury travel, and consulting fees. There is a good evidence that these payments influence medications that physicians prescribe. Drug companies also protect their profits with payments to nonprofit patient groups. In 2015, drug companies paid nonprofit patient advocacy groups $116 million. That is more than they spent lobbying Congress that year. A 2017 study found that 83% of patient advocacy organizations receive payments from drug companies, and at least 39% receive over $1 million. Over a third, 36%, appointed an industry representative to their board of directors, with influence on nonprofit advocacy agendas. Companies also directly finance patients to lobby Congress for their cause through some patient groups. Serious concerns have been raised about the conflict of interest, that groups will be less likely to advocate for lower drug costs to keep industry payments coming. Too many new drugs are priced well beyond the value of their benefits to health. For example, researchers estimated that Medicare paid $2.9 billion between 2009 and 2015 for Restasis, a dry eye drug with little evidence that it works. An analysis of the 90 cancer drugs approved by the FDA in the last century found that the average survival gain is just 73 days. A 2021 controversy over Biogen's new Alzheimer's treatment demonstrates the problem. Alzheimer's patients are desperate for an effective treatment, but with limited effectiveness and serious safety risk, the drug was severely overpriced. Many insurers and Medicare have decided not to cover it, or not in very limited circumstances, and many hospitals refuse to treat patients with the drug. Independent analysis by the Institute for Clinical and Economic Research has found that in 2022, prices for 7 drugs rose by $805 million with no evidence of improved effectiveness. Americans pay higher prices for the same drugs than people in other countries. A new analysis found that prescription drug prices in the US average 2.56 times the prices paid for the same drugs in 32 other countries. US per person prescription drug spending is about twice as high as for residents of comparable countries. The US is unique among developed countries because we negotiate drug prices and do not base prices on effectiveness of medication in improving health. Other developed countries evaluate medications' relative effectiveness in improving health compared to lower price current treatments and set prices accordingly. Companies can use monopoly power to keep new drug prices high for years. Americans pay for these higher prices in both our direct out-of-pocket costs, such as copays, deductibles, and hidden in our insurance premiums and taxes for government coverage programs such as Medicare and Medicaid. Insulin was discovered and patented 100 years ago by Frederick Banting and colleagues at the University of Toronto. The discovery meant that diabetes was no longer a death sentence. They sold the patent for $1 because they wanted insulin to be available to anyone who needs it. Unfortunately, insulin is now so costly that 1 in 4 patients has to ration doses, endangering their lives. Even though it was discovered a century ago and all research and development costs have been recovered, the 3 companies that control the market are using patent abuse to keep prices high. It is a long and expensive process to develop drugs. For every 5,000 promising new drugs, on average, just 1 is eventually approved by the FDA to treat Americans. It can take 15 years and cost $1 to $2 billion to move a drug through the full development process. However, most researchers estimate that drug companies more than recover these development costs when drugs go to market. In 2015, the 20 top-selling drugs generated revenues almost twice the cost to develop these drugs from just the US market. From 2016 to 2020, just Medicare payments for the top 10 most costly drugs more than covered drug companies' reports of their research and development costs. In addition, the federal government also provides substantial support and subsidies to drug companies for research and development costs. Federal payments of $22 billion to drug companies to develop COVID vaccine are only the most recent example. The federal government is the largest funder of basic biomedical research, which forms the basis of much drug development. NIH funded alone was $41 billion in 2020. Development of every drug approved by the FDA from 2010 to 2016 was based on NIH-funded research. On top of direct subsidies, the federal government grants substantial tax break to drug companies on their research and development spending. Government also grants patents and exclusive marketing rights to newly approved drugs, allowing them to charge exceptionally high prices. Drug companies blame pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, for their increase in drug prices. PBMs are large companies that manage prescription drug costs for insurers Medicare Part D plans, employers, and others. The concept is that combining a payer's market power allows the PBMs to negotiate better prices for all. PBMs keep costs down by developing formularies that are lists of covered drugs, by securing rebates from drug companies, and by contracting directly with pharmacies. PBMs have lowered prescription drug costs for payers, but they remain controversial. Because PBMs are often paid based on the rebates they can secure from drug companies, they have an incentive to allow drug companies to raise list prices, but also increase rebates. Rebate savings aren't shared with consumers, so patients pay more. PBMs also profit through spread pricing, which is charging insurers and government programs higher prices for drugs than they pay to drug companies. Despite years of complaints from businesses and voters, Congress and states have made little progress in lowering prescription drug prices. There are several reasons for this. Pharma spends more lobbying Congress than any other industry. In 2021, pharmaceutical and health service companies spent over $356 million lobbying at the federal level. They also support industry-friendly congressional and state candidates. In the first half of 2021, drug companies donated $1.6 million to congressional candidates, targeting members of committees that oversee the pharmaceutical industry. In 2020, drug companies funded 2,400 state legislative campaigns. In addition, drug companies make large payments to nonprofit patient groups who lobby for them to protect high drug prices. Despite intense lobbying in 2022, Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which allows the Medicare program to negotiate drug prices with pharmaceutical companies. Negotiations will start with 10 high-cost drugs with only one source in 2026. By 2029, they will be negotiating prices for 20 drugs. The negotiation only applied to some drugs and only those that have been 7 to 10 years since their FDA approval. Negotiated prices will start with 10 drugs in 2026 and rise over time. It is expected that pharma will file a lawsuit to challenge the law. As of June 2023, the negotiation process is still developing. Negotiating prices is expected to save more than $102 billion over 10 years. I hope this has explained how prescription drug prices are set. For more information, visit cthealthexplained.org.